This is CBC Vancouver News.
A major police incident in Coquitlam with multiple crime scenes. Also,
very devastating.
It's kind of scary, you know, like my son is in this school.
A young man has died after a stabbing outside a Surrey high school. And
it should piss you off and frighten you that my clinical decisions are actually not made based on what's best for you.
BC doctors claim they're being forced to jump through hoops to get coverage for potentially life-saving drugs. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm David Eby. Dan is away tonight. We begin in Coquitlam, where gunfire and a police chase followed an alleged robbery at a car dealership today. Mounties are still searching for two suspects. Mounties describe a crime spree that started at a car dealership near Lougheed Highway and Dominion Avenue in Port Coquitlam. Police arrived at the area shortly after 3:40 p.m. for a report of a robbery involving firearms and 4 suspects. RCMP say the suspects fled in the stolen vehicle before there was an exchange of gunfire with responding officers. Neither the suspects or responding officers were shot. Police say the stolen vehicle crashed on Highway 1 near the King Edward overpass, where the suspects fled on foot. One suspect was located on scene and was arrested by officers. Another suspect allegedly carjacked a nearby vehicle before fleeing to Surrey. Police were able to locate and arrest the suspect in Surrey later on. Mounties are still actively searching for 2 outstanding suspects, and it's still not known if they were injured. Anyone who witnessed this incident or may have video footage is asked to contact the Coquitlam RCMP. To Surrey now, where police say a young man has been stabbed to death in a school parking lot. The 18-year-old victim was stabbed around noon. It happened in the parking lot of Tamana Secondary School in Newton. Mounties say officers tried to save the victim, but he later died in hospital. Police say one person has been arrested. It's not clear if the victim or the person in jail are students at the school.
Police are still working to determine whether or not the suspect and the victim are known to each other and what their associations, if any, are to the school.
Mounties say the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team has been called in. Parents and guardians say the stabbing is very concerning.
I just want my kid to be home safely every day, and school is supposed to be a safe place for them, but nowadays I don't think it is.
No words, just upsetting. And, you know, to know that this is something that reoccurs at the school often, it's just, you know, is my brother safe? Are other students safe? It's just really, you don't know what to think.
It's too bad here. It's a bad situation, yeah.
Police want to talk to any students who witnessed the stabbing or who have a cell phone video of the attack. However, later, Tamana Secondary cleared in a letter to the parents that the injured individual was not part of the school community. Anyone with information is asked to contact IHIT. Medical specialists in BC say they are facing unreasonable challenges to get patients the best treatment available. The public program that covers the cost of some drugs has guidelines that require patients to try cheaper drugs first. Doctors say that's dangerous. And as Belle Puri reports, CBC News has learned changes to BC's pharmacare rules may not be out of the question.
Game-changing new drugs and devices regularly appear in doctors' offices. Getting them into patients' hands, not so much.
Clinical decisions are being handcuffed by financial Ministry of Health decisions.
New options are often expensive options. BC Pharmacare requires patients to try cheaper ones first.
For expensive drugs, it puts obstacles in the way to prevent widespread prescription, and the obstacle is called the special authority. So ultimately, it's to reduce prescriptions to save the province money.
Special authority is only granted when less costly drugs have been tried and failed.
I don't prescribe these drugs ever because they're dangerous.
Many British Columbians know that firsthand.
I was put on regular insulin, which made me gain almost like 60 pounds.
When January Zamora's doctor prescribed Ozempic for her diabetes, it took a year to get special authority for pharmacare coverage. It wasn't easy.
No. Sorry, I laugh at that. No, it's not. She had to advocate for me and jump through hoops.
It's best care versus best cost. And in a socialized healthcare system, and in a system where universal healthcare has been probably one of the greatest things this country has, that's not happening.
Late last week, an offer by doctors to revise Special Authority or SA guidelines was acknowledged by the Ministry of Health. In a memo, Assistant Deputy Minister Mitch Mineo wrote, "When we are able to re-examine our SA criteria, hopefully in the near future, we will be in contact with you to further discuss your recommendations."
It should piss you off and frighten you that my clinical decisions are actually not made based on what's best for you and what's healthiest and safest for your long-term care, but actually what's cheapest for this government.
There's no timeline on when the rules might change.
Meanwhile, CBC's Val Puri looked into other workarounds doctors have found for their patients.
Well, Dr. Elliott, who you just met in the item, he had a workaround. He would prescribe the cheaper drugs. The patient would get them, but would be told, don't take them under any circumstances. So what they were doing was creating the necessary paper trail they thought pharmacare wanted to get the better drugs faster. Pharmacare reported Dr. Elliott to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. The college is still looking at that complaint. Of course, Dr. Elliott isn't doing it anymore. One more thing. We've heard Health Minister Adrian Dix talk openly about his own type 1 diabetes. Dr. Elliott is his doctor.
Vancouver Council has voted to fund 100 new police officers and 100 new mental health nurses. Mayor Ken Sim campaigned on the promise to respond to non-emergency mental health calls. When it comes to the cost of it all, the idea is expected to cost $20 million a year. The motion has been met with mixed reactions. 3 councillors raised concerns about the rapidly increasing budget estimates for hiring the new staff.
I really feel that this is poorly formed and really is more deserving of there's certainly some great stuff talking about the mental health and some of the support for the Safer Communities Action Plan, but the specific allocation of funding, I am really struggling with where the numbers are coming from, how this has been vetted. We've seen the numbers change a number of times. And frankly, I know that this is going to go ahead because of the ABC majority, but I think it's reckless.
Meanwhile, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade says the staff will bring more response to vandalism and violent attacks. The motion leaves the door open for provincial or federal authorities to contribute to the plan. A BC Ministry of Children and Family Development employee has been identified as the victim of a Prince Rupert murder-suicide. RCMP were called to the Ocean Centre office mall Monday morning after reports of shots being fired. They say a 44-year-old man entered the mall and shot a 52-year-old woman before turning the gun on himself. Canada Border Services confirms one of their employees was involved in the shooting. The suspect was taken to hospital in critical condition but died from self-inflicted injuries. Police say the pair knew one another. Crown prosecutors across BC have been marching orders from the Attorney General, asking judges to keep suspected criminals deemed repeat violent offenders behind bars while awaiting trial. As Mira Baines reports, the challenges to bail conditions are meant to address public safety concerns.
The new bail policy is expected to help deal with threats to public safety. There's been a public outcry over random violent attacks and violent repeat offenders affecting crime in communities. BC Attorney General Murray Rankin issued a directive to the prosecution service.
We're directing all of the Crown Counsel, the 500 hardworking men and women across this province, to look at repeat violent offenders as a significant issue and treat it accordingly.
It's part of a larger public safety plan announced on Sunday by new Premier David Eby. The BC government has been under pressure to act on a repeat offender report. It said stranger attacks in Vancouver from 2020 to 2021 rose by 35% compared to 2019. The BC Prosecution Service released details about the new directive. Some key changes which are effective immediately would include Crown Counsel seeking the detention of repeat violent offenders charged with an offense against a person or when a weapon is involved. Crown Counsel will consider factors like outstanding criminal charges involving a weapon and to give consideration to breached conditions.
The tools that will be available through the directive, we hope, will enhance the ability of the Crown, working with the police, to get repeat violent offenders off our streets to make people safe.
The Attorney General says although he's convinced the directive will make a difference, ultimately it's up to a judge to decide if someone is granted bail. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
A daring rescue to tell you about now in Cranbrook after fire broke out on the third story of the former Knights Hall. Fire Chief Scott Driver tells CBC News crews rescued one person from a window. Another was taken to hospital with minor smoke inhalation. 24 people rent the building, which has now been deemed uninhabitable. It was hard enough to breathe on some days. An air quality report is raising the alarm over the growing severity of wildfire smoke in our province. Conditions are expected to worsen in the coming years, which could mean worse health effects. As John Hernandez reports, researchers say communities need to adapt.
From vehicle emissions to wood smoke, the predominant pollutants in BC's air are shifting.
Wildfires, open burning, residential wood heating are contributing a larger and larger fraction of air pollution to the overall mix.
Researchers say BC's air quality is relatively good, just not year-round, with longer and more severe wildfire seasons posing a particular concern.
Without a doubt, climate change is impacting our health.
This air quality report released Tuesday looks back on 2021 and supports an alarming trend researchers have noticed over the years. Wildfire smoke is traveling farther, reaching higher altitudes, and sticking around for longer.
It used to, be isolated in areas further north. That is no longer the case, and this is a significant impact for people living in Metro Vancouver.
Wildfire smoke exposure can lead to bronchitis, reduced lung function, and increased risk of cardiovascular illness, while events like last year's heat dome, which released high levels of ground ozone, are also damaging.
When you breathe that in, it's like giving your lung tissues a sunburn. That can create a significant long-term health issue, even for healthy individuals.
Experts say these climate trends are likely to increase over the foreseeable future.
We really, as a province, need to work towards learning to live with wildfire as best we can and learning to live with smoke.
Meaning residents need to take steps to protect their health.
The smoke's being generated outside. All of the things that we can do to help limit the infiltration of outdoor smoke into the indoor environment will help us.
And to support those who are most at risk, launching public clean air spaces could also become the norm.
We see cooling centers and warming centers, which are fantastic initiatives by municipalities. We also need to dedicate clean air spaces so those most vulnerable can protect themselves.
Adaptation, researchers say, can hopefully bridge the gap until a time when the smoke clears. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Several dead humpback whales have washed up on BC's shores over the last few weeks, and it's raising concerns for researchers who say there could be more out there. That story is next. And thank you for joining us on our commercial-free live stream. Some students at a high school in Regina are training hard, sharpening their skills in preparation for competition. But as Ethan Williams reports, their sport isn't playing on a field. It's at their fingertips.
These students at O'Neill High School have traded in their books for video game controllers. This is the school's esports club. Students spend each lunch hour battling one another in games like Super Smash Brothers or a soccer game played with vehicles that's called Rocket League.
It's a nice experience, I should say. But yeah, as you can hear from the background, it's very energetic in here.
No, it's not. Why do you guys have RPs, bro?
The students recently played in a tournament against other esports teams from across the country competing for prizes. Math teacher Dean Venderman oversees the club. He says esports mirrors traditional sports in terms of practice and preparation and teaches valuable lessons.
Are you eating properly? Are you exercising? Because you'll be able to play the game better if you're doing that. How do you handle defeat? Like, how do you treat people and with respect online and all those type of things? See, this is the mic.
Venderman also uses some of the games to teach his classes. 15-year-old Annika Warren says the club welcomes kids who haven't found an activity that fits.
It was one of the clubs where I felt the most at home. Everybody from every age, every group, every grade can just be as one and just play video games.
They just did it better.
Esports may not be common in high schools, but it's taken off professionally in recent years. Total competition prize money can top tens of millions of dollars and attract hundreds of players.
Some games have more viewership online for their finals than most sporting events do. So it's been nice to see, I think, some of the normalcy of esports kind of start to arise.
Blake Zanadine has set up an esports organization in Saskatchewan. He's doing outreach with teachers later this month.
Oh yeah, 2 kills.
That's not fair.
So what's next for O'Neill High School's esports club?
My idea would be to actually have a league, and then at the end have a tournament somewhere and host it at, like, say, the IMAX or maybe one of the movie theaters and have their games up on the big screen.
Until then, it's practice time. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina.
Several dead humpback whales have washed ashore in BC over the last few weeks, and researchers are worried there's more out there. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans says 2 of the 4 found since October 12th have signs of blunt force trauma, and researchers say at least 3 entangled humpbacks have been found along the coastline.
What has to be realized is dead whales usually sink. So usually they disappear with the stories of how they died. So it can't be said, yes, this is unusual that more have ended up somewhere where people have seen them, but there could be more that have died in the past that have sunk to the bottom of the ocean or ended up somewhere on the coast where people haven't seen them.
The Marine Education Society says threats are rising because of increased boat traffic, which can harm marine life and boaters as well. The group wants more education for ship operators on how to avoid collisions and how to untangle marine mammals. Avian flu has been spreading across Canada and the U.S. for almost a year now, and things could be getting worse. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says 10 commercial poultry farms in the Fraser Valley have had to quarantine for avian flu in the last week, putting BC's poultry farmers on edge.
When you first wake up in the morning and you go to the barn and you hear the birds and you're listening for, are they happy today? Are they still doing well? And that sigh of relief, like, okay, we're good for another day. But there is this uneasiness every morning before you get there, whether or not it's going to be okay. It's a very stressful time for us as farmers.
And last time BC farmers had avian flu this intense was in 2004, when 17 million birds were culled to prevent the flu spread. Both farmers and the province say they're doing everything they can to make sure it doesn't get to that point again. And here's a live shot of Harbour Centre. Johanna will have your full forecast next.
From the outside,
It almost looks like an ordinary vet's office. Except at most vets, you wouldn't meet Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew who's boarding here these days. And most vets don't have a waiting room that looks like this. Almost everywhere you look, there are cats. And things that bespeak cats. And bustling around in the midst of this convention of cats, this federation of felines, is veterinarian Margie Nixon.
They are more relaxed not hearing dogs around, and they don't sense the smells and the energy of dogs, and as a consequence, they can relax. And it's also because it's set up more like a living room and less like a clinic.
There are some cats in cages, either coming in or out of anesthetic, or because they're too timid or too aggressive.
Do you ever have cat fights?
We occasionally have a little bit of hissing, but other than that, I've been here since September 3rd and haven't had to sew up anybody yet.
The clinic does have stuff like a regular operating room, but instead of a sterile examination room, she has a couple of trendy consulting rooms.
Honey, come here, sweetheart. Let's get you over to your mama. Inevitably, every person who comes in here comments on how nice it is, how different it is. They tend to relax because we're serving them coffee and they're noticing that their cat's not upset. So we still need to brush Suki out. Okay. And you can help, cuddle her and talk to her. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the flea foam. Okay. Do you want some coffee? Oh, I got some. Sure. And there's some really good cookies too.
Coffee and cookies for the clients, who tend to get involved in the treatments. And for the cats of cats only, a cookie jar full of, what else? Catnip. I'm Mac Reimel.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC British Columbia's annual Food Bank Day returns on December 2nd. Join us for special broadcasts of your favorite CBC Radio 1 programs and fundraising for BC's food banks. And enjoy candlelit carols and joyous holiday favorites at Christmas with Corleone, December 16th to 19th. Celebrate the season and get your tickets at corleone.org.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Well, it's time for our BC-wide weather forecast. CBC's senior meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us. Jo, the rain is back.
Yes.
Will we get somewhat of a break?
Great question, Benit, and I think you're not the only one asking that. We do get a bit of a break, but when we get the rain this time of the year, it really comes on with fury, and I've got a few more systems before we get through the week. This is the system that brought us the heavy rain this morning. This cold front is currently tracking eastward. Behind it, some dramatic clearing for the next couple of days. That's not to say we won't have some showers on the back end, but we get a couple days break before this next system in the Pacific moves in for the second half of the week. Meanwhile, this cold front is still bringing active weather to the interior of the mountain passes up through the Caribou and through the Rocky Mountain passes as well. 15 to 20 centimeters overnight tonight and through tomorrow morning. Kelowna, it's been snowing for the past few hours. We have air quality statements in place through Prince George. And for central and northern coastal sections, 110 kilometer per hour wind gusts through the overnight and into tomorrow in Kitimat. 70 millimeters of rain for you, all on the back end of this same system. So there's that exiting cold front. A little bit of a high pressure. You can see it just scoot through for Wednesday and Thursday before the next couple of systems track inland to make for a soggy second half of the week. So as far as rainfall totals, this is the next system that will hit the north coast first, bringing that fresh round of wind warnings. This is also where we see the heavy rain through Kitimat. You can see upwards of 100 millimeters in some cases. For Metro Vancouver, the North Shore will see the most with the back two systems, the one that will arrive Friday and then through Saturday. We could end up with 40 to 60 millimeters by the end of the week on top of what we've already seen for Metro Vancouver. Temperatures, though, are pretty seasonal for the next few days. You can see the afternoon highs actually raising as we head into Saturday before dropping early next week. And I do want to show you the long-range forecast because there's a lot going on, including another drop in temperatures for the long range. So a few showers tomorrow for Metro Vancouver. We get our break day on Thursday. Showers return for Friday morning. Saturday looks like a wet and windy system. And then beneath our next weather pattern, cold and clear once again. So literally something for everyone in the forecast.
Thanks so much, Jo.
You're welcome.
A prominent First Nations scholar says a birth certificate recently obtained by CBC has convinced her Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond does not have a legitimate claim to Indigenous ancestry. Turpel-Lafond is a former Saskatchewan judge and high-profile academic. She has claimed that her father was a Cree child who was adopted by her non-Indigenous grandparents. But as Jeff Leo reports, a birth certificate recently obtained by CBC casts doubt on that story.
Cindy Blackstock says when she read CBC's story about the birth certificate, that was the final straw for her. The government-issued document says that Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond's father, William Turpel, was the natural-born child of British parents, not an adopted Cree boy, as Turpel-Lafond has claimed. Blackstock is a McGill University professor and a nationally recognized advocate for children. She says over the past few weeks, she's been following CBC's reporting about Turpel-Lafond and her claims to have Cree ancestry. And that reporting has led her to have serious concerns, but she says this latest revelation, this birth certificate, has removed all doubt.
Seeing that birth certificate to me was pretty clear and convincing evidence, suggesting that in this case, there is no Indigenous identity per se, that the only Indigenous identity claim comes from being a member of her husband's community, and that doesn't make you Indigenous.
She points out that some Indigenous leaders have defended Turpel-Lafond by pointing out that she has been accepted by her husband's community, the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. But Blackstock points out that Turpel-Lafond has claimed to be from the Norway House Cree Nation in Manitoba. She says she's spent a lot of time in Norway House and has never heard Turpel-Lafond's name.
I've often heard how proud they are of their nation members, including Jordan River Anderson, the founder of Jordan's Principle, amazing people like Tina Keeper. I've never heard any conversation regarding Mary Ellen when I've been up there. So that also carries a lot of weight, is people from the community are saying that this does not line up with their memory.
Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond has lived, quite literally, all of the lives that can be lived in the law.
Blackstock points out that Turpel-Lafond is still employed by UBC, and she has been granted many honorary doctorates from universities across the country. She says if Turpel-Lafond received any benefits based on her ancestry claims, then she received them illegitimately, and those universities need to take action. CBC has provided Turpel-Lafond a copy of the birth certificate and requested her comment, but she has not replied. Jeff Leo, CBC News, Regina.
And that is your late news for Tuesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1, and that starts tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Good night.